We built machines that can move mountains, but sometimes we have to drive right through them. When American engineers drilled 6-mile holes through solid granite, they created a new kind of battlefield. But what happens when the oxygen burned, when the air itself becomes the enemy, and when the 10 deadliest heavy rail tunnel choke points come into focus? Inside a mountain, the rules of survival change. When you send 10,000 tons of diesel or steam power into a pitch-black tube, the massive engines consume millions of cubic feet of air. In minutes, they replace the oxygen with superheated toxic exhaust. The temperature inside the cab spikes to 150 degrees. The engines literally begin to suffocate on their own unyielding strength, stalling out in the dark. But the real nightmare is not the machine dying, it is the men trapped inside the cab, breathing poison. How do you survive when the air itself turns into a weapon? And what happens when a mile-long train stops dead inside the earth? A tunnel does not just swallow a train, it fights it, every inch. The moment a 10,000-ton consist noses into a 6-mile bore, you can feel the air shift. The locomotive becomes a piston, ramming a column of atmosphere ahead and dragging a vacuum behind. At 40 miles per hour, that piston stream can reach 300 cubic meters per second, over 10,000 cubic feet of air every heartbeat being shoved through stone. The geometry is unforgiving. A tunnel's cross-section, maybe 50 square meters, is barely wider than the train itself. Most of the air has nowhere to go but forward, compressed into a surging wave that hammers the far portal long before the headlight ever shows. But the tunnel breathes with its own rhythm. As the train barrels in, it pushes fresh air ahead, momentarily clearing the way. Then the exhaust hits, a plume of superheated hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide and water vapor mixing with the displaced oxygen. When the consist slows, the piston effect collapses. Air stagnates. Buoyancy takes over, but it is a weak force, maybe a few cubic meters per second drifting uphill, driven by the heat of the exhaust. Not nearly enough. The tunnel's volume, 500,000 cubic meters give or take, seems vast until you are sharing it with 3 locomotives, each devouring air at a rate that would empty a small stadium in minutes. The numbers do not lie. Every ton of train is a claim on the tunnel's oxygen. The heavier the load, the faster the suffocation. There is no mercy in the math. When the piston flow dies, you are left with whatever atmosphere remains, and the mountain does not care if it is enough. There is a single line you do not cross in a tunnel: 19.5% oxygen. That is the OSHA floor, the moment the air stops being safe for humans and starts belonging to the engine. Carbon monoxide at 35 parts per million is the other number. Hit either one and you are in the red. It does not matter if you are running steam or diesel, the math is merciless. A steam consist of 3 engines pulling 10,000 tons at full throttle will crash through that oxygen line in under 10 minutes if the air is not moving. Diesel holds oxygen out longer, but carbon monoxide spikes like a knife, 4 minutes, and you are at the poisoning threshold. The numbers do not just sit on a chart. They tick down in real time, every second you are inside the bore. A steam locomotive burns through 2.5 kilograms of oxygen for every kilogram of coal. Stack 3 locomotives and the air in a tunnel with 500,000 cubic meters of volume is theirs to devour. Diesel is a different beast, with less oxygen consumed per gallon, but every liter gives back a plume of invisible carbon monoxide, which binds to the blood faster than oxygen ever could. Federal law draws the line at 19.5% oxygen and 35 parts per million carbon monoxide. That is not a comfort zone, it is a survival margin. When piston flow dies and the fans cannot keep up, you are left counting minutes. 10 minutes, if you are lucky, before the oxygen drops enough to make your hands shake. 4 minutes, if the diesel is running dirty and carbon monoxide builds up fast. That is the calculus. Every time you enter a tunnel, you are betting your life on the numbers holding out just long enough. Hoosac, Saint-Germain, Galitzin, Summit. For steam crews, these tunnels meant one thing: heat and poison, waiting in the dark. The stone always gave itself away first, a cold, wet smell, limestone sweating in the air. Husak's 5 miles could turn a coal drag into a furnace in minutes. Once inside, the air pressed down, thick and metallic, carbon monoxide creeping in with every breath. Old firemen still talk about the terror of a seized fan. In March 1922, Husak's big fan froze solid with ice and soot. 4 Pacifics clawed at the grade, burning coal so fast the oxygen dropped to 14% halfway through. Carbon monoxide rose past 80 parts per million. The cab thermometer read 120 degrees, but the real danger was invisible. Crews slapped wet rags over their mouths, desperate for a scrap of cool air. Some lay flat on the deck plates, cheek to steel, searching for the last dense layer before the heat drove it up. The only comfort was the rhythm of the wheels and the hope of daylight ahead. Saint-Germain, 1939. Another tunnel, another disaster. A helper stalled, the draft reversed, and exhaust backed up so thick you could scrape it off the glass. Carbon monoxide readings hit 120 parts per million. Soot blinded the head brakeman for 3 days. He crawled out on hands and knees, lungs raw, eyes streaming, clutching a rag soaked in meltwater. That was the price, cooked alive and half poisoned for the ride home. Galitzin on the horseshoe curve was routine hell. By the mid-1920s, trains ran 15 locomotives and 15,000 tons through a summit shaft never built for that load. The day the fan seized, the bore became a stone throat. Cab temperatures hit 150 degrees, and carbon monoxide reached 150 parts per million. The old wet burlap trick was all that kept men conscious. Crews rotated through the firebox heat, swapping places on the floor, each man pressing close to the steel for the last scraps of air. Some would ride open flats, faces to the wind, praying for a shift in the draft. No one wanted to be last in line, not with the mountains squeezing the breath from your lungs. Summit tunnels were meant to be engineering marvels, but every extra ton, every stalled fan turned them into ovens. Stone walls radiated heat back into the cab, baking the crew. A maintenance foreman once said you could fry an egg on the boiler jacket by the time you cleared the summit. His carbon monoxide meter would jump from 35 to 120 in minutes. He called it the countdown to blackout. No policy, no procedure, just survival. Wet rags, face down on the deck, and a silent promise. Make it to daylight, or the mountain keeps you. Silver Pass was never the most famous crossing, but for Great Northern crews, it was a name you tasted for days. The tunnel was short, 1.5 miles, yet perched at altitude, battered by snow, and cursed with a grade that forced every engine to full throttle. Before fans, survival meant muscle and luck. 2 men at the portal, sleeves rolled, working a hand bellows for half an hour per train, just to wedge a little air ahead. If the wind shifted, the next crew entered a tunnel already starved of oxygen. 3 engines, 10,000 tons, full throttle, the math gave you 11 minutes before oxygen dropped below 12%. Hand bellows pushed 1,200 cubic feet a minute, but the engines filled the tunnel with particulates twice as fast. Soot blinded men by the third car, PM blindness they called it. Crews crawled out, eyes streaming, lungs raw. Superintendent's 1915 log read, "Brakeman incapacitated by smoke." Crew rotated to open flats. Bellows duty cycle unsustainable beyond 2 trains per hour. Mountain Cut, farther south, was a straight shot at the divide, a stone throat with no mercy. By midsummer, cab temperatures topped 140 degrees. The stone walls radiated every BTU from the boilers. Crews swapped positions, firemen to the floor, engineer to the window, each searching for a scrap of air. The division superintendent's order was blunt. Wet rags on all crews, no exceptions. Any man found without will be pulled from service. It was about survival, not discipline. West of the divide, tunnels stretched longer, grades steepened, air thinned. By 1914, the toll was impossible to ignore. Crews suffocated, engines stalled, rescue parties went in with stretchers and oxygen tanks. The regulators' patience snapped. On October 15, 1914, the Interstate Commerce Commission issued a fan mandate. All tunnels exceeding 4,000 feet with greater than 1% grade shall be equipped with auxiliary ventilation fans, operational prior to entry of any heavy steam consist. The wording was clinical. The effect was immediate. Railroads scrambled to retrofit fans, carving shafts into granite, wiring motors for 5,000 cubic feet per minute. It was not enough to clear the air, but it bought 3, maybe 5 minutes, just enough for a train to claw its way to daylight before the oxygen burned away. Where systems failed, men adapted. Hand bellows became ritual. Conductors carried pocket mirrors to check for soot-blackened faces, a silent signal to swap out before blindness set in. Superintendent's notes from Silver Pass read, "Fan capacity insufficient for current tonnage. Recommend reduction or double pumping. Crews advised to ride low, keep faces to the steel. Survival window, 8 minutes at current load." By the end of steam, every rule was written in sweat and carbon. The 1914 fan mandate marked the first time the mountain blinked. But the mountain never surrendered. The only safety was to keep moving, chasing the last breath through stone, hoping the numbers held until the next portal. Cascade Tunnel is the kind of place that teaches you not to trust anything you can't see. On a cold night, the mountain presses in, minus 12 degrees outside, steel rails popping under the weight. You can have all the technology in the world, twin 12,000 cubic feet per minute blowers, real-time oxygen and carbon monoxide sensors, a control room humming with screens, but the air inside that tunnel still belongs to the engines. Automation's supposed to keep you safe. The system reads the sensors, stages the fans, and keeps the carbon monoxide below the red line. But when the cold hits hard, the rules change. Exhaust from 4 SD-70 locomotives doesn't rise. It hugs the floor, thick and slow, pooling in the lowest pockets. The software is tuned for normal. It waits for the numbers to climb before it kicks the fans to full. That lag, 2, maybe 3 minutes, can mean everything. You're rolling 15,000 tons uphill, 3 miles deep, when the carbon monoxide alarm starts its slow, steady pulse. 42 parts per million in the cab, and climbing. That's not just a number, that's the taste of blood in your mouth, the ache in your temples. The air feels heavy, like breathing through a wool blanket. The sensors are supposed to be your lifeline, but they're only as fast as the code that runs them. In cold weather, the buoyancy that should carry exhaust up and out is gone. Carbon monoxide builds in the dead air, invisible, binding to your blood faster than oxygen ever could. You watch the readout tick up, 38, 41, 42, knowing the fans are still spinning up, knowing you're riding the front edge of a wave you can't see. The road foreman's voice crackles over the radio, flat and clipped. Hold your position, fans are coming online. If it spikes above 50, mask up. He doesn't bother with comfort. Everyone knows the numbers. You sit there, counting your breaths, waiting for the software to catch up to the physics. The old-timers used to say the mountain always gets a vote. In Cascade, even the best automation can be a step behind. The air can turn on you in minutes, and when it does, there's nothing left but the sound of your own pulse and the hope that the fans start before the numbers climb too high. Moffat Tunnel is where diesel learned to fear its own breath. 4 locomotives, 10,000 tons, swallowed by 6.2 miles of granite. Inside, the only law is oxygen. Each engine at full throttle devours 12,000 cubic feet of air every minute, 48,000 gone in 60 seconds, and the tunnel offers nothing back. The first warning is not a smell. It is the hush when the cab fans sigh and fall silent. That is the moment every crew dreads. The intake chokes, the fans give up, and the air thickens, diesel exhaust stacking in layers, curling under the floor, pressing against your lungs. You feel it before you see it. Oxygen drops below 16% and the trailing units start to suffocate. Their intakes pull nothing but their own exhaust. One by one, the prime movers cough, stumble, then stall. The lead engine drags dead weight, and the tunnel just keeps packing in more fumes. Restarting is a desperate bet. You hit the starter, the engine whines, but there is no clean air left. Intake sensors trip, fuel cuts, and you are left in a steel box filling with heat and carbon monoxide. OSHA's line of 19.5% oxygen and 35 parts per million carbon monoxide fades fast. Now you are sharing what is left of the air with machines that cannot breathe. The crew grabs SCBA kits. Straps bite, the mask seals, and you taste rubber before oxygen. Protocol is muscle memory: mask up, check your partner, count the restart attempts. 2, 3, sometimes 4 tries before a unit catches. Each failure means more exhaust, less air, more risk. Nobody talks about the fear. You listen for the fans. If they are running, you have a chance. If not, you count your breaths and hope the next restart works. Modern tunnels have sensors and automatic fans, but the mountain always gets a vote. That is why every cab in the Rockies carries an oxygen mask, not for comfort, just to stay alive. 0 hour starts with the throttle pinned. Notch 8, engine screaming, every cylinder clawing for air that is not there. The mountain swallows the first 100 yards, then the next 1,000 yards. By minute 3, the trailing units start to cough. Intake fans whine, then fall silent. The tunnel's atmosphere turns heavy, thick with diesel exhaust, oxygen dropping, carbon monoxide climbing. At 3 minutes 40 seconds, the brakes set hard. The consist shudders, then settles into dead stillness. All that power, now just a steel coffin pressed tight by stone. The crew's eyes flick to the meters, carbon monoxide climbing past 40, then 50 parts per million. At 5 minutes 12 seconds, protocol takes over. Self-contained breathing apparatus kits come out, straps cinched, rubber sealing to skin. Each breath tastes of panic and latex. No one speaks. Hands move by memory. Check your partner's mask, count the restart attempts. The air is gone. Every second is a negotiation with the void. A tunnel fan is just steel and numbers, but inside the mountain, numbers rule. Moffat's biggest fans move up to 10,000 cubic feet per minute each, yet a heavy train can need twice that just to keep the air barely breathable. 3 locomotives can burn through 48,000 cubic feet of oxygen every minute. Even on their best day, the fans can only deliver about half the airflow required. The gap is not a fluke, it is built into the system. Carbon monoxide rises, oxygen drops, and the fans cannot keep up. As one engineer said, if the fans cannot match what the engines use, you are just rationing poison. With main fans maxing out at 24,000 cubic feet per minute, safety becomes a matter of chance, not design. Every time a 10,000-ton train drops into a 6-mile bore, it is a wager: horsepower against atmosphere, flesh against chemical thresholds. Even now, a single failed fan or an overloaded consist can turn a tunnel into a closed system. No exit, just parts per million and the clock. We do not conquer the mountain. We negotiate with it, one breath at a time. Drop your thoughts if you have ever felt the mountain breathe back.